Go on, give me a round of applause. I've earned it. I smashed through 10 whole books this month, finished them all off, started some more, started actually quite a few more. Kind of like the TBR and currently ongoing reading pile get out of hand, but we'll talk about that later on in the video. I smashed through 10 books in April. 2 of them I talked about in my last wrap up because I finished them right before recording that video. So we're talking about the 8 I finished, the 5 I'm somehow in the middle of at the moment, what I'm going to be reading in May, what our book club read is going to be. I stuck with the theme of this year, which has been continuing on and finishing series that I've started. So Discworld and Realm of the Eldlings showed up a lot this month. So let's go through the books I read, see what I thought about them, see if I'd recommend them or not. Then we'll get to my reading pile after that. Let me know down in the comments what you read in April, what were your best reads, what were your worst reads, and what are you most excited to be reading in May? Who else is excited for the release of The Devils and ready to smash out some new Joe Abercrombie reads? Patreon linked down in the description where I have separate reviews for all of these. But into the video, Men at Arms, Discworld, the second book in the Night's Watch series. This one was just good quality fun. I can't say the Night's Watch has been the best part of the Discworld. I can't say it's been the worst part of the Discworld. We'll get to that very soon. Men at Arms, just good quality continuation on from Guards. The Night's Watch has taken on some new DEI hires. We've got some issues with the leadership going on. We've got the first ever gun in Discworld showing up, and all these things just going on at the same time. So we've got our misfit band of Night's Watchmen from Guards. They're now having to take on more leadership roles in the Watch. We've got these new DEI hires like trolls and dwarves that do not like each other. So we're just seeing them all mixed together, and we're just seeing the trouble that guns can cause thrown into this world for the first time ever. It's a fun mystery story. There's just a lot of mischief and adventures going on, and it's just a good quality, fun Discworld story. I tried reading this one before, but didn't finish it. I don't know why. It was good quality, like 4 out of 5 read. Wouldn't say it's the best of Discworld though. So overall, not my favorite Discworld read, not my worst, but it's just a perfect Discworld sort of read. Now, the worst Discworld book I've ever read. I'm so sorry, guys. I decided to make our book club read last month, Mort. And don't get me wrong, Terry Pratchett, great writing, good humour. He's always chucked some interesting themes into his books. But Mort just wasn't it for me, man. So this is the first book in the Death sub-series in Discworld. So I thought Death was going to be our main character, but it was a side character. And Death, if you haven't read any Discworld, kind of just like a Grim Reaper. Whenever a character in Discworld dies, he appears. We get about 20 seconds of like fun dialogue between the character who's just died and Death, who's taking them to wherever that character believes they're going to go. And then he disappears. So we get to get into the background and see Death going around and doing these things, but Death is getting a bit bored with what he's been up to, so he decides to get an apprentice. So in comes Mort, just a country boy that is purely incompetent at most things. And Death tries to get some time to himself while Mort tries to take up Death's job. And that's what our story revolves around. Now, I didn't find Mort overly interesting, the character, which led to Mort the book not being overly interesting for me. So I gave this one, I don't use ratings all the time, but like a 2.5, 2.75 out of 5, because it's fun seeing Death have some time off. All the stuff with Mort didn't really work for me. So there's some interesting discussions on like fate versus free will. But for the most part, I just wasn't down for Mort's adventures. So it wasn't a great read for me. But I will continue reading this series because I think Mort's going to be out of the way now, and we're just going to be able to spend some more time with Death and his adventures in the next book in the Death sub-series. Now, I wish I could say that was all my disappointing reads for the month over with, but then I went into The Price of Power by Michael McKell. Now, I loved how this book started. I love Michael's writing, and I love the plot he set up for us. So very early on, we find out 64 years ago, the country that our story is set in, it had been overtaken and the inhabitants of the country had been enslaved. But these slaves had risen up, fought a rebellion, and retaken their own lands. Now, these slaves, their own lands, they were separate kingdoms, but they came together and they stayed together and formed a new kingdom to keep their enemies at bay. Now, this book takes place where the factions that make up this country, they want to separate again. Some of them want to be by themselves, and then some people are like, no, we need to stay together as a kingdom, otherwise we're going to get attacked again. Now, we find out all this in the blurb. We don't actually get too much of that in the book. We just get a lot of build up to it. Now, we get a little bit of that story playing out right at the end. We had a couple lines talking about the impending threat from the other kingdom, but you don't really feel that while you're reading the book. You just get told it in like 2 sentences, like one near the beginning, one near the end. But you don't really feel like there's like actually that big a threat coming from the outside. You feel like the whole threat's coming from the inside. So it's just all the build up for that story in book 1, which really disappointed me because I was like feeling this build up at the start of the book. I was like, all right, I see where this is going. It took way too long to get there. It's a 700-page book, incredible writing, 2 incredible characters, and it just a book that screamed potential, but took too long to get to the point and wasn't great all the time along the way. We get one character who is central to the main storyline, and he's done a lot in his past. He's a big political player, but he's been out of it for the last 14 years. And his storyline in this book is getting pulled back in. But he doesn't even get all the way back in. He's just playing out this one little storyline of him getting back in, but he doesn't even get back to it by the end. His whole story is like how he has to change his mindset to get back to who he once was. And then right at the end of the book, someone uses magic and does that work for him. So he never had to do any of that work himself, and it was all pointless in the end. So that really frustrated me. There was a couple other storylines about just characters that just had no agency and just wouldn't go and do anything for themselves, but they end up in roles where they have a lot of power, which is just really frustrating to me. Like, not an interesting character. They didn't earn any of their power. They didn't earn the ability to be where they are. It's just unwarranted. It's not like they were even born into that power either. So it's not like a Joffrey situation. So this is a book, a series that screams potential, but it really disappointed me. I did a full 10-minute review on this on my Patreon, and I did it completely for free. So if you wanted to check that out, completely free, link to the Patreon down in the description, and went through all my thoughts in that video with just some very minor spoilers. Great writing, some really good characters, some really interesting world building. I like the idea of the plot, but you didn't get to that idea of the plot in this book. And it was 2 pages for that. So I think this series will be a DNF for me, unfortunately. But yeah, really good, dark atmosphere. I made a whole dark fantasy video just because of the excitement this book gave me when I first started it. But just that excitement didn't carry through to the end, unfortunately. Now, another series I caught up on, Dune. So I read God Emperor of Dune, the 4th book by Frank Herbert in the Dune universe, and this is a really great read. So this one was set 3,500 years after the first initial 3 books, and this wraps up the storyline for the Atreides family. So although there's 2 more books by Frank Herbert set in this universe that I will definitely be reading, I feel like I've closed off a loop. I feel like I've closed off a loop for Dune, so I'll take my time before I get back to those. I feel like I've ticked Dune off my list for a little while now. But I've got to say, finished it off in an incredibly satisfying manner. I won't say much about it because obviously being book 4 of a series, I don't want to spoil anything for you. But there were some really interesting themes discussed. So obviously the book being called God Emperor, we get some interesting discussions about tyrants and all-powerful leaders and stagnation versus chaos. So having a single God Emperor, someone that's above humanity, that can see into the future, or kind of see into the future, and set humanity on a path. and just that being set on a path. Is that right? If that leads to the survival of humanity, is that right? Or do humans need a bit of chaos and need to be able to have their own agency? So Frank Herbert loves to just dive into all those different themes, and there's not just one theme that he's diving into. He's always doing so many different things, and I think on a reread, I'll get even more out of this series because there is so much you can get out of each page that if you want to read this book in an efficient manner, you're just not going to get it all on the first read. But incredible writing. Frank, just insanely good writer. If there was any author alive or dead, that I could sit down with and just ask some questions to, Frank would be very high on that list, just to how he was able to think of all these things and then put them in such an interesting story with great world building. If you've read the first 3 Dune books, I highly recommend continuing on to God Emperor and finding out that more of the story, getting the ending to the Atreides journey. And at some point, I will be reading books 5 and 6 because Frank is such an incredible writer. I know they're not the most loved books, but out of pure curiosity to see what Frank wanted to talk about, I will be checking them out. Now, Robin Hobb. I read the entire Tawny Man Trilogy and the novella The Wilful Princess and the Piebald Prince in April. Now, I have a lot of thoughts, but this is the third trilogy in Unravel with the Elderlings, so we'll keep this spoiler-free. Tawny Man Trilogy. 3 books, but I feel like this is 2 books. The first book, Fool's Errand, complete story all in itself. Fitz getting pulled back into the world that he's been away from for the last 15 years, taking up a new role in the 6 Duchies. There's a lot more of the fantastical elements in this trilogy in Tawny Man than there was in the initial Farseer trilogy. So it's fun seeing those magical elements more at the front of the story, playing a bigger role. It's interesting to see the new cast we get, the new layout we get. So we get a lot of returning characters, but it's been 15 years. There's some newer, younger people, and Fitz is taking on more of a mentor, more of a leadership role. So it's really interesting seeing Fitz in these roles. And in Fool's Errand, we get a really good tale. I feel like every note you wanted that book to hit, it hit. It was just everything you'd expect from a Robin Hobb book, but done in its best way. The ending didn't feel too quick. The pacing didn't feel too slow. Everything felt earned and well worth it, and it was just a great journey to go on with Fitz and Night Eyes. Now, my issues take place in the next 2 books, The Golden Fool and Fool's Fate. These felt like one book to me. In The Golden Fool, 25-hour audiobook, we're getting some repercussions from book 1. We're building into the storyline that we got set up from book 1 in the trilogy. And then we boom, 60% of the way into the book, we're like, all right, here's our quest we're going on. We get told the quest. We're like, all right, here we go. Let's go on this quest. And then the next 30% of the book, 40% of the book is just all getting ready for the quest. It just goes seamlessly into book 3. There was no ending. It was just, let's go to book 3. Book 3 picks up, still getting ready for the quest. We go on the quest. 32-hour audiobook, by the way. So if I'm doing my maths correctly, which I probably won't be, it's like a 57-hour audiobook for what I would call one book, but it's 2. That quest we go on, it wraps up at the 66% mark. Then the whole rest of the book, the whole next 10 hours plus of audiobook, the whole next 33% of the book, it's all wrap up. It's all wrap up and closing ties. Now, if that was to be the end of the Drama of the Elderlings, that would be fine. And I'm pretty sure that was Robin's initial plan, was to wrap up Realm of the Elderlings after the Tawny Man Trilogy. But that's not what she does. She ended up going and writing a 4-book series and another trilogy after that. So all this wrapping up, it just went on way too long. It just kept going and going and going. And it just undoes so many of the good things that happened throughout the series. It takes away the consequences of the book. It goes way too happy ever after, but in such a disappointing direction for a happy ever after. If you know, you know. And I found this book predictable. Now, if anyone knows anything about me, I can't predict books to save my life. I'm horrible at reading a book. I don't think about predicting endings when I'm reading a book. I just think about enjoying the book I'm in. but I was able to like guess things whilst going through this one, and most of them came true. So if I'm predicting something, any other reader is predicting 2, 3, 4 times as much as what I did. So although I loved Fool's Errand 5 out of 5, although I loved Golden Fool, and I was a little bit annoyed it didn't have a complete story and it was just part one of the book, I had a good time the entire time through Golden Fool. Fool's Fate just dragged for me, and it really soured me on Realm of the Elderlings, a series that I've just been throwing out 5 stars for, like left, right, and center. Fool's Fate was a disappointment for me. The pacing, predictability, not that predictable is bad, but it's predictable in a disappointing manner. Lack of consequences. That's annoying for me. Just that's all I'll say. But books need consequences. People's actions need consequences. I won't say more. So I'm less enthused to continue. I still will. Like I love so much about Hobb, and there's a lot of Hobb's good things all throughout these books. There's just those few things that irked me that really brought it down for me, and it was just a bit too much. But there's still a lot of great things. Now, the novella that you should read around the time of the Tawny Man Trilogy, The Wilful Princess and the Piebald Prince, easy 5. One of the best, if not the best, novella I've ever read. It was a 3-hour audiobook, so something you can sit down, listen to, or read in an afternoon, in a single sitting. This is a story that takes place generations and generations before any of the events of Realm of the Elderlings, so you could probably read it at any point in time, but it really plays around the politics that are going on in the Tawny Man Trilogy. This was a highlight read for April for me. Like, this was compelling, this was gripping, this is really interesting. This is a story that was written to us by someone that was around the events that happened between the Wilful Princess, Caution Farseer, and this Piebald Prince, which I won't say any more about who he was at risk of spoiling something. But the lady that wrote this story to us, she was in a very interesting position. We get to see her biases play out throughout this book and the way she tells her story. We get to see some really interesting perspectives, and this is just a book that just had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. Really well done. A full, complete story, like beginning, middle, ending, like drama all the way through, high stakes. Like, you really felt this book, and you really felt like you lived out this lady's life with her whilst she was watching the life of the Wilful Princess. So anyone that wants a good read, check that out, especially around the time you read Tawny Man is great, but you can read it after you've read Farseer. That would work very well too. Now, I did have a DNF this month that I got past the 50% mark on, and it wasn't a DNF because it was a bad book. It was everything the book was supposed to be. It was smashing the series out of the water. It was book 6 of Dungeon Crawler Carl, I the Bedlam Bride. And the only reason I DNF'd it is it was just too long for the type of read it was. So it's a 27-hour audiobook. I made it about 17 hours in before I decided to call it quits. Now, if you've read like the first 2 Dungeon Crawler Carl books and having a good time, keep going. If you've read 5, keep going. Dungeon Crawler Carl 6 does everything you want it to do. It levels up the story. It continues adding to the political intrigue and all the backstories that have been building up through the last few books. The stakes keep going up. There's a really interesting level that we're on. So it's kind of a bit like Pokemon with like how this floor of the dungeon is structured. And we just get more of all the characters we loved. By every definition, I should have loved this book. It's just a little bit too long for me. I just couldn't be in it any longer. But as far as what this series is and what this book should be, get onto it. It's fantastic. It's going to give you everything you want. And from everything I've heard about book 7, it continues on that manner. Just for me, 27 hours is too much for Carl and Donut when I'm not in the mood for Carl and Donut. So I may return to it one day, but at the moment, I just need a breather from those 2. And that story is, I want more of the fighting back against the game, the political things going on, rather than just the on the floor playtime. That's what I want, and I just want them a little bit more concise, sub 20 hours. But that's just a me thing. Definitely not a reason to DNF the series at all. Now, for the books I'm currently reading, the books I'm going to be reading, and what our book club read is for May. Well, so the book club, just link down in the description, Fable, completely free. We're going through The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. Now, I'm going through The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. I've started a little bit early. I've cheated. We'll pretend that didn't happen. And hopefully that's not broken. But I've cheated. I've started a little early. That was me getting some karma. We're going to be reading this one as it releases. I'm pretty sure it comes out on the 2nd in the UK and AU, and then the 13th in the US and North America. But you'll have to check. I'm not 100% certain. I'm only like 40 pages in. And this is very interesting, getting a alternative history, medieval Europe, with a whole bunch of different fantastical elements. There's elves in this, though we haven't really seen them too much yet, but they're supposed to be really evil and slimy and grimy. There's vampires, magicians, sorcerers. But so far, my takeaway has been this is felt like a pilot episode for a sitcom, just both the way the characters have been introduced and just the sort of like skit feeling settings that we've had, where it's like going for humor and playing on a lot of like stereotypes and like how like these shows sort of go, like sort of character interactions feel very much like it's just made to be a sitcom rather than like a more serious read like First Law. So make sure when you go into this, you're just going in to have a fun time. We're not expecting a serious read with great compelling characters like we would in First Law. Alter those expectations, but very excited to get into it. Joe's got great humor. If you've ever seen him do an interview, if you've ever read one of his books, one of the funniest guys out there. And, you know, we kind of get like a Suicide Squad for the Pope going and fighting evil. I'm excited to get further into it. Now, the other book I'm in at the moment that is like just funny and also just nice light read, Moving Pictures by Terry Pratchett. Basically, Hollywood has come to Discworld to Ankh-Morpork. There's some magic being let out in the world, and it is just pulling everyone into the desert, and they are building the movie industry from scratch in this place called Hollywood. It's just fun. It's easy to read. There's no chapters, so you don't want to put it down. You just want to keep going and go from scene to scene and see what is happening in this Hollywood setup. So this has just been good fun to read. You can read this at any point in time. There's no set order for this one in Discworld. I'll put up the order here. And then I may actually be reading another Discworld. I've been listening to Going Postal as I've been falling asleep. Now, I read Going Postal last year. I already know what happens. I just love Moist One Lip Week. I love the book Going Postal. So it's just been a really fun little listen for while I'm falling asleep. All these Discworld books have fantastic narration as well. So although I love reading this before I go to bed, I also love listening to it before going to bed. Terry's just fantastic. Going Postal is fantastic. Moving Pictures is fantastic. Now, for the complete opposite sort of feeling, where we just get boom, 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 just tons of short little scenes just in a very easy, light manner. I'm also reading Memories of Ice by Steven Erikson. I'm currently in the middle of a 2-hour and 45-minute chapter on the audiobook. Really sad this narrator doesn't continue the series, and there's going to be a new narrator for book 4. But Memories of Ice is shaping up to live up to all of the hype you guys have been giving it. I really feel like I'm in a role with Malazan now. I really feel like I'm understanding all the world, all the different magic systems, all the different gods, and just all the players, both in the politics and in the command structures. It's great. Everything I've said about book 1 and 2 continue on, but it just gets better because we're getting deeper into these character stories. We know more of their background now, and just seeing these characters riff off each other, seeing all these characters have to deal with the things from the previous 2 books, so interesting. Like, again, incredible characters, underrated humor, great, beautiful, descriptive writing that is like gritty and has you like feeling for the character, but then you also just understand that this is just a huge, massive world, like insanely big world building. I just can't wait to get deeper into this book. The plotting is just incredible. The pacing's good. Like, we just keep getting more information about this world as well and all the different things going on. My intrigue is building. I just can't wait to continue diving through Malazan this year. So I'm going to be reading Memories of Ice, but I'm also going to be reading House of Chains in May. Then the last book I'm in the middle of, or right at the beginning of really, is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is one I've just been meaning to get to for like years and years, and I'm just finally doing it. I've finished off a lot of series that I have wanted to finish off this year. I've done a really good job finishing things, so I'm going to be doing a lot more starting things going forwards. And Lies of Locke Lamora is the first one I'm going to be going into. I don't know if I'll read all the books Scott Lynch has out, or if I'll just be reading Lies of Locke Lamora and treating it more like a standalone. We'll see how I go. So far at the moment, it's good. It's fine. It's just a very heisty book, and that's all we've got so far. Now for the other books I'm going to be reading, I'll be having my long-awaited return to the Warhammer 40k universe. I'll be reading Day of Ascension by, hear me out. Let me try it. Adrian Tchaikovsky. Adrian ... There's no way me as an Australian can just say that name. I'm so sorry. You'll have to spell it out for me down in the description. Let's continue. Feet of Clay, I will be returning to do even more Discworld. I'll be returning to the Night's Watch series, so Feet of Clay, third book in that, continuing on there. We've also got the third Janny Works books in the Wars of Light and Shadow series, Warhost of Vastmark. I'm itching to get into that book. I'm doing it as a buddy read, and can't wait to continue on with that one. Very excited there. It's huge, it's epic, it's lyrical, it's dense. I just have a great time. It's just so classic. It's what I love about classic fantasy, and she hasn't let me down yet, so I just can't wait to dive back into that. Also, Name of the Wind and Justice of Kings are two potentials. I'm pretty sure Name of the Wind is much more likely to happen than Justice of Kings, but the goal is both. The goal is both, and potentially even Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. That is a lot of book ones, but trust me, we're going to try to make it happen. The missus wants to start all of them, so we'll see how we can go getting into all of them. And I believe that is it, but we'll see how we go. Who knows? Something might surprise us. We might just want to dive into book 2 of a series that we start in this one. We'll see how we go. Thank you so much for watching. Again, let me know, what were the highlights from April? What were the lowlights? And what are you most excited for in May? Will you be reading The Devils with me? Let me know.